to reach out to others and to bring them in with me, because I've always been a hard worker. But that's one thing I wish I would have done, is brought people into my work ethic, and as a team worked with them as a player and as a student. Like, you're not on your own. It's your whole team. You're only strong as your weakest link. And if you only work out by yourself, only you are getting better.
You are now tuning in to the Roughnecks podcast with your host, Cole Nixon. Much love.
What's up, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of the Roughnecks podcast. I'm your host, Cole Nixon, and my goal of this podcast is to bring on leaders in the world of athletics, coaching, entrepreneurship, and just life in general to try and motivate us all to be better. We shouldn't strive to be millionaires in terms of money, but by the millions of lives that we can impact. If you want to be a guest or have a guest idea that you would like to hear from, then shoot me an email at roughneckspodcast@gmail.com. Be sure to subscribe, rate, and review if you like this episode. Then head over to our social media and give us a follow on Instagram at Roughnecks Podcast, Twitter at Roughnecks Pod C1, Facebook at Roughnecks Podcast. And then don't forget to subscribe to the Roughnecks YouTube channel as well. As always, be sure to grab the bull by the horns and take control of your life. Let's get into this week's episode.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back. It's been a couple weeks since we've done an episode, but we are back, and we should have possibly a triple episode week, but don't hold me to that because you know how it goes with me. Sometimes I'm back, sometimes I'm not. But this week is actually a very special week. I'm doing a giveaway on Instagram of our first ever Roughneck sweatshirt. So if you guys want a sweatshirt, actually it's on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok. So you have multiple ways you can enter. Go on to the social medias, find that sweatshirt, find the giveaway post, and enter into that giveaway. Fall sale coming next week. Big week also. Tomorrow, the day after this episode is released, is the 1-year anniversary of the Roughnecks podcast. It has been a whole year. We'll get into that. With hopefully we will have an episode on that date. But getting into this week's episode, for joining me for episode 51 is a former teammate turned rival for a second, but Mr. Gabe Shroyer. Welcome to the Roughnecks podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Not a problem, man. I'm glad you you filled a spot that I needed and you jumped in at the last second. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, something I've been kind of wanting to do lately. So yeah, it's a pleasure.
But before we dive into the whole teammate turned rival thing, I like to let my Roughnecks guests give our Roughnecks listeners a little background on who they are. So tell everybody who Gabe Shroyer is.
Yeah, so went to Watkins Memorial with Cole, of course. Learned a lot when I got to play with him. Till he, broke his arm, but I learned a lot of leadership tips from him. Ended up playing at Wittenberg University. Rivals of OU. Same conference. Very cool to play. Spent 2 years there. It was an interesting process for sure. Nothing like high school at all. And I'm sure you can attest to that, Cole.
Yeah, 100%.
You just learn so much. Like it's unreal. In the first couple of weeks, you're like, wow. Like I didn't know. I knew so little about football.
Yeah. Because we always thought we knew a lot, the people that go play college football, usually you're pretty good in high school, obviously. And you think you're the shit in a way. And then you go to college and you're like, whoa, what? My mind was just like, wow.
Yeah. Everyone's just as good. And you're like, man,
yeah,
this is wild. But yeah, I spent 2 years there. COVID hit, kind of had some weird circumstances, prayed about it. Felt like God was calling me to another part of or page in my life. Ended up transferring to Ohio State. Senior year right now, studying biology. I want to get to physical therapy when I'm done. So
at least you have a plan. I didn't even have a plan after college. I didn't have a plan going into college. I thought I had a plan going through college, and then like ended it. I was like, well, I'm gonna go put pools in again because I don't know what I'm gonna do about a job.
Yeah.
But at least
No,
I got
feel
a
that
job.
way
I
too.
can't complain. I got a job and I'm working. So I think my parents are very happy about that.
Yeah. No, it seems kind of scary getting out, but I think I'll be ready for that. Yeah.
So the first question I want to ask, I usually like to ask all of my guests this kind of question is why WIT originally? Why did you decide on, because this episode, we've talked about it before, like this episode, me and you discussed it. I want this episode to be, our topic this month is sacrifice. And we're going to talk about the sacrifice you make as a student athlete. So the first question I'm going to ask you is why WIT? Why did you end up going to there?
I think it was the visits that really kind of put me on. Visited some other schools. No, I just wasn't attracted to them. Like coaches, talking to coaches. Wittenberg is like there's a lot of tradition there. Come from the school walk-ins. I mean, my class did not so well, but yeah, they win rings every year basically. So like I'm like, hey, I want to go win, so I'm gonna go play for Wittenberg. Yeah, I mean, it was pricey, but along the way I learned like there's teachers that look out for you in the private school. That's a huge advantage, and like yeah, just a smaller school atmosphere. It was good for me.
Yeah, that's kind of like the similar thing with Ohio Wesleyan for me, because I remember like that decision process. First off, they, like you said, you went to multiple different schools and visited. That is the best thing to do if you're a student athlete that wants to go. Don't just text these coaches. Don't just have phone
For sure.
conversation. You have to go to the school, and I highly recommend overnights too, because I loved a few handful of schools. I probably had 3 or 4, but then I did an overnight at Ohio Wesleyan, and I was like, that's where I want to go. That's like this. You just know, and it's not the same for every person. You're just gonna know that feeling of when you're in that, when you find the right fit. And people, I think a lot of times knock out, like I remember in high school for me, I never wanted to go D3. I was like, it's either D1, D2, or
Yeah.
I'm not doing it. Well, then I actually broke my elbow. And then that was when I was like, I still want to play. And honestly, when I went to the D3, I was like, I was nowhere near ready for D1 or D2. Like, I don't even know what I was thinking, because the amount of talent that is at the D3 level is insane. Like you guys, I remember playing against like Thaddeus Snodgrass, who like, I think he was
Oh
at
my
Kentucky
goodness.
before he was even
Yeah.
a WIT. So like, there's a lot of talent at the D3 level, and
Mhm.
don't knock out that D3 like atmosphere, because like you said, those connections, like professors and stuff. Like I still have a professor that I talk to constantly about the podcast. He's even tried to hook me up with jobs and like stuff like that. And
Wow.
it's just like you build those connections through that smaller school. Like you don't get that because you're at Ohio State now. You probably don't get that as much. Like you probably don't have as much
Not
of
at
a
all.
relationship with your professors like you did at WIT.
Oh yeah, no. That's funny you bring up Thaddeus. I mean, we had like 4 other guys that were like B1 level, and I I had to face them in practice because I was the corner, and like it was a test, like for sure. I'm like, I'm facing the best right now, and this is where I want to be for sure. But
Yeah.
yeah, like you said, like I still talk to some of my professors at Wittenberg, and like at OSU, it's tough. I just have no relationships with professors. You gotta build study tables. You gotta do some things on your own to like get that good effect for school. It's just not the same.
Yeah. So, like I said, I want to talk about the sacrifice you make as a student athlete in this episode. I'm going to ask you this question first. When you hear the word sacrifice, what comes to mind for you?
Sacrifice is put me on the spot. I'm gonna think it up. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of crazy too. Like it's a simple word, but when you actually like look at it, you're like, what does it really actually mean?
Yeah. I think sacrifice is you're losing something to gain something. Going to school, you're losing everything from home. You're going to a brand new environment, and that's a huge sacrifice, like easily put. You don't know anybody. Like your family's home, like, I mean, depending how far you go, but yeah, you're sacrificing a lot going to school. So
Yeah, like because I remember I was only 45 minutes away from home, and Witt's what, maybe an hour and a half. I can't remember exactly.
Yeah.
It's not just kind of, it's like we're close enough that we can come home, but we don't have that option necessarily to come home all the time anymore, just with college in general. Because like I remember missing a couple birthday parties of my nieces because my nieces and nephews, because like I had football or I had to do an assignment. Like you give up a lot of stuff. And because like football, especially even at the D3 level, like you barely have any time off. Like
Mhm.
even in the off season, you're still lifting 4 or 5 times a week, and you got all the study tables and all kinds of stuff that you have to go to.
Yeah. I'm glad you bring up family because I'm the youngest of 8 siblings. So yeah, I got like 18 nieces and nephews, and like when I got to go home, I was like ecstatic. Like I couldn't wait to see them. So I know exactly what you're talking about. But yeah, people think just like, oh, off season, like whatever, you don't do as much. Like no, you got. Sometimes we watch film in the off season, and it's like, yeah, it's a whole nother level.
Especially like when spring ball starts, like you watch time just dwindle even more because I don't know what your guys' schedule like, but a lot of times for us, we were lifting 4 times a week, but we also had practice 4 times a week. So like our schedule, like you'd go lift in the morning, have class all day, then you're at freaking practice, and then like you by the time you get done, eat dinner and do homework, it's 11 o'clock, and you're like, wow, I didn't have time to do any personal, like relax. Essentially, that's what people don't realize about a student athlete. And what is one piece of advice you think you would give a high school kid looking at possibly going and playing a sport at the next level?
Oh man, I wish I could have talked to myself. I'm sure you could have said the same thing. Yeah, make sure you're going to the right school, of course, because I mean, what, you start out with 100 players in your class and only 15, 20 of them graduate with you. Like it's crazy. But to the players, I would just make sure like you're balancing everything, because you're talking about you have a girlfriend or your classes, your football, your faith, if you're religious, all these things. You have to learn your time management. And you got to be serious if you want to do this. Like it's no easy sacrifice. Like if you want to play, you better make sure like you're doing the things that you have to be a part of like that team.
It's funny you said time management, because like that was what I had in my mind for this entire thing. Is that is the biggest thing you have to learn, and it's going to take you time to learn, because you're going to think in high school like, oh, I did it in high school, like I was fine. Your classes are no longer the same. you got homework all the time,
Right.
you might, and then like it's all these things that you got. Because I remember my freshman year, part of it had to do with the classes I was taking, part of it had to do with my decision making and time management, where especially as a freshman, like people were like, oh, let's go party, let's go drink, let's go do all this stuff. And as a student athlete, it's nice to have a schedule, because as a student athlete it helps a little bit. But my freshman year, my GPA was below a 2.0.
Yeah.
And in high school I was a 3. I think I graduated with a 3.7 or 3.9 or something. Like I was a pretty good student in high school. And
Yeah.
I found out real quick in college what happens if you don't set aside time to study, because you're like, oh, I don't need to study for that exam. You need to
Yeah.
study for those exams. In high school, you could get away with not studying for a test or a quiz. In college, you don't study, you're probably going to get a very bad grade on that exam or whatever it is.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm in my senior year and I'm still learning how to study. Like you never stop learning how to learn.
No, not at
Just
all.
working on like organization and big things for like freshmen is having like a planner and setting your day and like having that schedule. And sometimes coaches will print off papers for that, but like you have to set your day. It'll be like, oh, I miss talking to my mom or my dad or my significant other. So yeah, that's huge.
Like the planner thing, because that's the thing. Yeah, coaches might have a schedule, but that's for football. People don't like, you got to set aside that time for your academics as well, because after all, like even though Cardell Jones said I didn't come here to play school, if you're at the D3 level, there's more than likely a chance that you're not going to the NFL. So the biggest thing is your academics. And that's where a lot of people, because like you watch a lot of people, you probably saw it at Witt all the time, where like people come in and like you said, you come in with a giant class. First off, before camp even ends, you already have people quitting because they can't handle camp, and they
First
don't
day.
it's literally from like 7 a.m. in the morning till like 8 o'clock at night, 9 o'clock at
Yeah.
night. And then you don't have any, like you're busy with football, but then you also get when school starts. That's where I watch a lot of people, like their grades are just going down the drain. After that first semester, you lose a lot of people just because of grades.
Yeah. I mean, there's like so many talented players. Like, you're like, geez, I can't compete with this guy. And next week he's gone because he can't figure out at school. And you're like, wow, that kid was talented, but he just couldn't get it done in school. And it's just wild to see that. So like, that's a huge thing is once you get to the college level, it's all about want to. And I'm so serious about that. It's like high school, it's like, okay, we need you, like the city needs you, like we need you to win. But once you get to the college level, there's someone right behind you who wants your spot, and you have to put in the effort, and you just have to want it.
Oh,
Like it's all about
100%.
want to.
Like in high school, once you get that starting spot, you're not like there's not very many times where they lose it. You might
Yeah.
lose it a little bit, but like in college, you have one bad game or one bad practice. Because I remember like being second string my sophomore year at safety, and then like I watched the safety. I had a good practice. The other safety had a kind of a bad practice, and it just flipped. And it was only for a day, but like they do
Yeah.
that because they're not like there is plenty of players. You're easily replaced at the college level.
Yeah. Yeah, no. Yeah, just what you said. I mean, I had a bad practice and running off like 2 or 3 hours of sleep. So I was trying to do homework the night before. Bad time management, whatever.
Oh, we've all been there.
Yeah, I think so. But yeah, my coach after the practice was like, Gabe, you look like shit. And I'm like, oh man. Next day I look at the roster and I moved down a spot. And it's like, yeah, I honestly deserve that. And you watch film and you're like, geez, man, this is the thing that I can improve. And if I don't, I'm gonna stay there. Like I have to have better practices.
Yeah. And the big thing too is football is great, but you can't get so caught up in it.
Oh yeah, for
The
sure.
great thing that I love too about football is like, in college that's when our stress starts to take over. Like we get a lot of stress, which I can tell you, it just continues to get worse. Once you graduate, it's even worse because like today I've been running around with a chicken with my head cut off and finally got on here, but you start to get all this stuff. But football is that time where you can, or any sport, you can just finally like let all that stuff go and go
Mhm.
do the sport you love. Because like you said, you're running off 2 hours of sleep. You're probably worried about this or that or whatever. When you're playing that sport, just let that go. Now, as soon as that
Mhm.
sport ends, it's going to come back and that's fine. But give yourself some time to like step away from that stress, from all the worries that you have. And that's the great thing about college athletics or any athletics in general is that it's almost a stress reliever.
Yeah, no, I learned that my sophomore year. Just like distinguishing between your sport and your school. When it's time for football, it's time for football. It's not thinking about your family or your girlfriend or or your classes. Like it's time for football. And once you leave the field, it's time. Okay, I got to go do classes. Like if you don't distinguish between the two, and your mind's on classes while you're in football practice, you're struggling, and your coaches will see it. And I mean, I've had coaches like, hey dude, are you okay like mentally right now? Like you look down. I'm like, yeah man, I'm just stressed about school. Like he's like, yeah, you got to leave that, dude. It's time to play football.
Yeah, you got to let that stuff go and that's the same thing. Like if you say you had a bad practice, if you're going to do it, you can't go mope about it. Because you got your schoolwork to do, you got you got a project, you got to study, you got to do this. You can't let that impact your academics as well. That's the big thing that took me a while to understand is that you got to you got to distinguish between the two. You got your academics part of life and you got your athletic side of life, and you can't let them cross over with each other too much.
Yeah, you're gonna struggle for sure. That's just a fact.
It's going to be a pain to handle. So I had a question and now I completely forgot what that question was. What do you think is the biggest sacrifice you make as a student athlete overall? Because there is a lot of sacrifices that we've talked about already. Like, you're walking away from your family. But like, what do you think is the biggest sacrifice?
I think the biggest sacrifice is time. I mean, for me, it was like your sacrifice almost your whole day for football. It's a full-time job, and then school's another full-time job. And you're like, where's my social life? Where's my time with my family? Where's this time where I get to relax and do my own thing? And you just have to like work that out. Like, hey, this is this time where I get to spend an hour in the showers, just like relax and just vibing in there, whatever. But yeah, it's your time. So that's just the biggest thing is it's time management and doing the things that you like, or you're gonna burn out, like we talked about, because school and football or your sport is just time consuming, and if you don't make time for yourself, it's not gonna look good.
Take me through, because I know what it's like, but I want our listeners to understand. Take us through like a normal day of let's do a class day. We'll do a camp. I'll do a camp day. You could do a class day of what it's like when you have class and football during the regular season. So like, what's a normal day like for you, or what was it like for you?
Yeah, normal day. We'll say Wednesday. You got film 7 a.m., maybe 6 a.m. So you're waking up 15 minutes before that, 20 minutes before that, because you got to go walk there. After film, go to breakfast. You got class, 2 or 3, depending on the day. Maybe you finish up school around 2, 3, and then you got practice 3:30 maybe. And you'll run practice 3:30 to sometimes 6, maybe, depending on the day. And then you get home. You want to eat, of course. After that, maybe you watch a little film. And next thing you know, it's 8 o'clock and you have to turn in assignments, and like you got to study for your classes. And by then it's 10 o'clock and it's lights out.
Yep. And that's the thing too. By 10, I learned in college, like I didn't want to stay up late playing a sport. Like, man, I was tired. I was ready for bed, because that was the worst. Is like when you're up at 11 o'clock still studying, like, I'm miserable right now. Like you're half asleep.
Oh yeah.
Man, I shouldn't have, but I lived off energy drinks in college. It was bad. I lived off Monsters and coffee. Like I just rode on those all night long. But like, yeah, and that's the thing too. That's a normal school day. When you're in camp, because we're in camp, a month before the classes start, probably.
Yeah.
And that's 7 days a week, or at least it was for us. It was 7 days a week.
Mm-hmm.
Like you didn't have an off day, and you're up, 7 a.m. We practiced in the morning by the end of my career. So like we'd have practice, I believe it was 8 o'clock. So, you're up at 7. You might grab a little something to eat real quick, like a quick snack. Just you didn't want to eat too much. You went and you had practice from 8 to 10:30, 12, 11, whatever it was. Then you get done with that. You go eat, shower. Then you got lifting. And then, so you had an hour of lifting and then an hour of film. And it was just like, and then you had install meetings, and like the rest of your evening was just meetings all day long. Yeah. And you never stop. Like it is from 7 a.m. I usually, like, there was nights where we didn't get out of meetings till after 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
And like, by then you're just like, I'm going to bed. There's nothing else to do. I'm just going straight to bed.
Yeah. So you can't wait to sleep.
Oh yeah. Sleep is the greatest thing in college. You hardly get any of it, but it's great. That's why, like, I don't know about you, but like anytime I had a chance, like a class got canceled or something, I was like, holy shit, I get to take a nap. This is awesome. Let's go.
Yeah. No. And throughout that day for football, don't be late.
Oh God, no.
Oh gosh. Yeah. I got a story. I was 2 or 3 minutes late to just a study table. Guy writes me down as late. I'm like, whatever, dude. I'll probably have a thing I got to do after practice. And we had a bad day in practice. So the coach is mad at us. And I got to do 100 yards of bear crawl on one leg. I'm like, that's not even possible. And he said, no, we'll be out here all night. I'm pretty sure I spent an hour trying to do that. And he just didn't care. I mean, these college coaches, this is kind of their life. So like he was willing to be out there all night, literally. But like, that's the thing. Just don't be late. Like that's the difference between you playing and not playing. right there.
Oh yeah, right there. I think because we call it a strike system for us is what we did. We called it the S list, where we had what we called non-patrol. And that was at 6 a.m. If you were late to a meeting, or like we had, if you forgot we had called it a champions manual. It comes off of Jim Tressel's winner's manual. And like, if you didn't bring that to a team meeting, you had to run the next morning. You had to go to Dawn Patrol. You're late. Any of these little things, like you do something stupid and you get caught out at a party and you get in trouble with the campus, like you're running again. But we called it the S list. And your first one, it was just you running. Your second strike, it was just you running again. Your third strike, it was your whole position group had to come at 6 a.m. with you. Your fourth one was the whole side of the ball, so offense or defense. And your fifth one, you were talking to Coach Watts about possibly getting kicked off the team.
Wow. Yeah, you don't want to make your teammates run because they'll be pretty pissed at you, no doubt.
Yeah, my freshman year, we had it was the biggest class I think Ohio Wesleyan has seen for a while. And let's just say with a big class, a freshman, you're going to have a bunch of screw ups. Man, there was times where like the DBs are all showing up along with the D line, along with the running backs. And like, we're all here and we're like, what are you guys here? Like, everybody's like, yeah, because of this person. Like, it was to the point where but it also keeps the entire team accountable, because once that person gets that third strike or fourth strike, you're on them like, hey, do you need a ride? Like, dude, just ask me for a ride. I'll come pick you up. Or you're texting them in the morning, are you up? Like, make sure you're up and all this stuff. And it's the accountability. But you learn real quick that time management. Like, if you're 2 minutes late, if you're a minute late at the college football level, we're talking college football, but any college athletics, if you're a minute late, you're running, you're doing something. You can't be late to anything. And I always try to get to meetings 10 to 15 minutes early, because if you're not there, if like you're showing up at that last second, you're pushing it, because you never know what you're going to run into. It's just like people always say, leave for things early, like a job interview or whatever, because say you run into traffic or something could happen. So it's always better to be early than pushing the limit.
Yeah, our coach actually had something for that. Coach Fincham, great coach, by the way.
Yes.
Anybody looking at Wittenberg? I
will say that Wittenberg is the only team in the conference that I never beat. I never beat Wittenberg. We beat Wabash when they were ranked like 8th in the nation. We beat Denison. Wittenberg, for some reason, we just could never beat. You guys have had that skull that we don't actually play for years.
Yeah, that was one thing. We always seemed to play really good against you guys. I don't know what it was. It was just like, oh, Ohio Wesleyan, yeah, we're gonna play real well this game. I don't know what it was. That's just how it was. But Coach Fincham said about being on time. He said to be early is to be on time. To be on time is to be late, and to be late is to be forgotten. And that's just the truth. If you're late, you're forgotten. No matter how good you are, you could be a D1 athlete and you don't know the plays, you can't play because you missed that meeting. And it's just critical. Just be on time, and that means being early.
Yes, that is. I think that's the biggest piece of advice to someone who is going to play college athletics in general. Be early to everything.
Yeah.
Because if you're early, first off, if you're one of the first ones there too, your coaches notice that.
Yeah.
It may give you just a little bit of a bump.
Yeah.
Your coaches notice the little things that you do, and the little things are the big things that matter.
Mm-hmm. So I wasn't the best player on the field for sure. I was talent-wise middle maybe, but that's one thing that just helped me and boosted me is I was almost always on time, always where I was supposed to be, and coaches recognize that.
100%.
Yeah.
And another piece of advice that I mean, for me personally, it's what helped me the biggest between my freshman and sophomore year. That first off season, when you have your off season lifting, push yourself like crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Because first off, you don't have anything to lose at that point. Mm-hmm. Most of us aren't going to go in and start as freshmen. So go in and push. That's when because that first year, especially defensively, playing DB, like at least for us, dude, it was freaking nuts. Like all the different,
Yeah.
like in high school, we ran what?
Oh my
Base. We
gosh.
ran base. What was it? Base. I don't even remember what the signal for black was, but it was base black every play.
Yeah, black or
Coach
gold.
Warrington. Yeah. Coach Warrington I loved Coach Warrington, but he was the most basic guy. In
Oh,
college,
yeah.
it was like, yep, we're running this. And
Yeah,
I'm like, what?
they're like roll the safety. I'm like, we're rolling. What does that even mean?
Yeah, because when we played, like we lined up at 7 or 8 yards, and then we were good from there.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's pretty fun for someone who loves football to like learn all these different coverages, but I mean, it's wild how much. I mean, it's just like a class. You have to like learn all these things, or you'll fail the class. Like it's huge to learn.
It becomes second nature, but that first year,
Mhm.
stay in your playbook, because no matter
Yeah.
what position, because that is the hardest thing, is picking up. You're learning a whole new defense or offense essentially. So you're relearning football in a way. So you just got to stay in your playbook and like, look at it for 10 minutes every night, whatever. Even if it's just 10 minutes, that's where the time management, set aside 10 minutes. Cause there was
Yeah.
it's similar to like, I've talked on this podcast with the book, people who read or like want to get into reading. Stop looking at it as, oh my God, this is a 300-page book. I'm never going to finish this. Set aside a little bit of time every day to read 10 pages, because if you look at it, you read 10 pages every night for a month, there's a 300-page book done.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, it doesn't seem like, when you chop it up into these little bits, it doesn't seem so hard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's just growth. That first year, you just want to focus on your growth, because chances are, yeah, you're not starting. So like, if you can get in the weight room, if you can study your playbook, and you come back your sophomore year, you're that much closer to starting. You're just putting yourself in a great position. So just maybe like if you don't start, it's just a growth year. You want to grow as much as possible, and it's going to be tough, but it's essential if you want to play.
Yeah, because that's where I watched a lot of kids too struggle. Like I even struggled when.
Me too. Yeah.
Oh, and that the big thing too, I'm going to go off this. Get your ass on special teams.
Yeah. Yeah.
Get on special teams, because if you want to be noticed, that is where those coaches will notice you. If you're just flying around on kickoff or whatever and knocking heads, man, they're going to notice that stuff. Get on. Don't be afraid to play special teams. I used to love special teams. My senior year, even though it was kind of the COVID year and we didn't really get to play,
Yeah,
they took me off a punt, and I went, Coach Cotter, I want back on. What do you do? Like, I've been on this for 3 years now. I want back on for my 4th year. Like, I don't want to give up my spot. And they were like, because it was a lot of it was, you're a senior, you're a starter. And I was like, I don't care. I want on my special. I was on every special team my senior year besides PAT field goal. I was never.
wow.
I'm no big boy, so.
Wow. No, that's pretty wild that you were on all of them. That's special. Yeah, but no, special teams, you learn to love special teams as a freshman and sophomore. And I definitely love kickoff. I love punt. I love punt return. Not so much a fan of kickoff return for those who've done it, but
I got a story for that in a minute.
Yeah, that's a rough spot to be. But yeah, no, special teams is great, and that'll get you on the bus, and then you get to do cool things like stay in hotels and like have cool breakfasts in the morning. Like, yeah, it's a great spot to be.
Yeah, speaking of kickoff return, I got my welcome to college football on kickoff return. Otterbein, under the lights, freshman year. I was only on special teams. We got the ball first, so here I am running on the field like, oh, my first college play. And I played the center position, which is the person in the front row, right in the middle, right by the ball. That was where I played for all 4 years.
Oh, yeah.
And I dropped back, got my drop, put my foot in the ground, started going after, and I just got fucking folded, leveled. And I was like, but the funny thing is there was a bunch of freshmen on our kickoff return. If you watch that play, you just see people like on all of us on our backs, and we're like, oh God.
Like dominoes, yeah.
Yeah, it was bad. I like got up and like ran to the sideline. Was like, well, this is what college football is. Cool. Now I know I got to run a lot harder and hit them a little harder, not be soft.
Yeah, I feel that. I played that same position, and I don't know what it was. I'd look down the line and be like, all right, small. I get to my guy and be like, gee, Mini Christmas, this guy's a 250-pound linebacker. I got to block this guy. I'm like, okay, whatever.
I will say one of the cool times on kickoff return is when I actually had to block Dante when we were playing Worcester. That was actually,
that was
I was
cool,
like
yeah.
counting and I was like, oh, I got that guy. Oh, this is easy.
You got to let them know on the play too, and after the play, like, oh
Yeah.
man, too easy.
So I got a few questions that I like to ask all my guests as we start to wind down our episode. But first one is, who is your biggest inspiration in life?
Biggest inspiration.
I guess I should say who or what, because you can have other things as not just people as your inspiration.
Yeah. So growing up, it was probably my older brother. Pushed me, and I know people that have older brothers. You, of course. You get pushed by them and constantly. When you look at it when you're young, you're like, oh man, why are they pushing me so hard? Like relax, man. But then you get older and you're like, wow, I'm so glad he pushed me. But yeah, you just get a great appreciation for that. And then, as I'm getting older, I'm getting stronger in my faith, and like I just like the example off of like Jesus Christ. Even in sports, you can example off of Jesus, or whatever religion you are. The perfect example to me. Yeah.
Speaking of like older brother, it's funny that you say that. And like, why are they pushing you so hard, man? I remember there's a little basketball court at our neighbors down half court. Me and my brother would go down there when I was younger, and I would never be able to win. Like, he wouldn't ever let me win. And he was 6'3". Here I am in 5th grade, like a whole 4 foot nothing. Like, obviously I'm getting my stuff swatted. It was just bad. But then I look back at it, there was a reason that I started to become better at basketball and like stuff like that. It was because, I'm playing against someone, and you had to learn to adapt to, all right, I can't just run up and do a layup. Like, I got to do some type of fake shot, like pump fake and all these things that you learn. But your older brothers, like older people in general, because I'm actually about to go to a Little League football game.
Yeah.
I picked number 4 because I originally wanted number 3. My brother was number 3, and I looked up to him so much, and I always wanted number 3. Well, we had Corey Hare, who had number 3, so I wasn't getting that number. So I picked the next thing closest to it, which was 4. And then the Little League football game I'm about to go to, he wears number 4 because of me. He remembers watching me come play in high school. And like that kind of stuff, that's where people sometimes, you also got to remember, you have a lot of people looking up to you at that college level, especially. Like, you got to think of all those little kids that come to the games. Like, people look up to you. So how you carry yourself is you're almost mentoring people without even directly doing it. Indirectly, just them watching you.
Yeah. I mean, my little nephew, not so little anymore, starting quarterback for Watkins right now.
Yeah.
Actually, I think just broke the career passing record at Watkins. So yeah, he's doing pretty well. But I think hopefully it's been like that for him, where he was like my little brother, basically. Even though he's my nephew, he's my little brother, and I took him on as that. And I never got to win when I was younger either, playing my older brother. Like, there's no mercy. And so like I did the same thing with him, and he's just a competitor now. Like, now he beats me. It's like, yeah, like you've grown because like you had to figure out new ways to try and beat me.
You learn, I've said it 100 times on this podcast, you will forever learn more from your failures than you ever will your successes.
Yeah, I like that.
So another one is, if you could go back in time and tell your 16-year-old self one thing, what would it be? And I don't mean like go back and change anything. I just mean like, if you could go give yourself a piece of advice when you're 16 years old, what would you say?
16-year-old Gabe. I would have probably told myself to reach out to others and to bring them in with me, because I've always been a hard worker. But that's one thing I wish I would have done, is brought people into my work ethic, and as a team worked with them, as a player and as a student. Like, you're not on your own. It's your whole team. You're only strong as your weakest link. And if you only work out by yourself, only you are getting better. And like, you just got to reach out to your teammates. And I mean, even at the college level, it's just reaching out and like saying, hey, come work out with me, come throw with me, come run with me. Like, those are huge, and you don't realize it until the games start, and you're like, man, I mean, I'm doing okay, but as a team, we're not doing great. There's no chemistry.
Yeah. And like, even if you text someone like, hey, you want to come throw to me? And they say no, you know what? Text them the next week. Try it again. Don't stop. Because that
Yeah, be
persistence is
persistent,
eventually they're going to be like, you know what? Screw it. Let's go. Like, and then they might realize like, oh, this isn't actually that bad. Like, it's probably a good idea. Be persistent and keep trying to push it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And probably another thing I would have told myself to be a freaking leader. That's for sure. As as I got to college, I saw what some true leadership was. And like, I'm like, man, I should have been a true leader. And I thought, lead by example, but there's more to being a leader than leading by example. And I mean, you guys were great leaders, you and Dante. I remember there's one moment I was struggling, and you guys pulled me over after practice, and you guys were like, hey man, are you good? You good at home? Like, do we need to do anything for you? And you guys were like being great leaders. And
I'm not even going to take all the credit for that, because I remember Dante coming up to me and was like, dude, is Gabe good? And I'm like, I don't know. He's like, let's talk to him after practice. I'm like, okay, whatever, man. You know what? I'm following you on this one. But,
yeah, that was huge.
But going off that, like, I remember even in high school and in college, the years that we had the best years, like the overall record wise, weren't the years we had the most athleticism, most like great players. It was the years we had the best leadership.
Yeah.
Like, because my sophomore year, when we went to playoffs in high school, we weren't the greatest team. Like, I was just a little sophomore playing freaking safety, and I had no clue what the hell was going on half the time. But we had so many people that like were great leaders, like Mike Ford, Nathan Miller, Cameron Johnson was a great one too. Like, all these people who were great leaders. And like, the following year, my junior year, that would have been your sophomore year.
Yeah.
We were supposed to be sweet and struggled.
We were so talented. Yeah.
And I think, I'm not trying to knock anybody, or I'm not going to bring up any names, but I think a lot of it is we always had too many Chiefs, not enough Indians. Everybody wanted to be that top leader. Sometimes other people just needed to follow, instead of like everybody who kind of like wanted to do everything, like wanted to be the top guy instead of working together as a team.
Yeah, I think we were reversed my senior year, but just not enough Chiefs. Yeah, but another thing is like just being a leader, even though you aren't a captain. Like, people are like, oh, I'm not a captain. Like, dude, whatever, you can still speak out. And another thing for me is like, oh, I don't want people to not like me when I'm a captain, so I'm not going to say anything. Like, fuck that. Like,
yeah,
go talk to them. Like, they need you to go talk to them, and they may not like it, but it'll help the team at the end of the day. So like, fuck being like, oh, everyone likes me. Like, it's worth it in the end, for sure.
Yeah, to be a leader, sometimes you're not going to be liked.
No.
I mean, let's be real. Look at all of our presidents. You're the leader. Somebody doesn't like you.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter which side you are. You're never going to be liked. Like, there's going to be people that do not like you, and that's okay, because that's the way leaders are. Because the big thing, they might not like you because you're actually giving them the honest truth. And that truth can hurt sometimes, because I remember getting pissed at people in college, like they're getting on my ass. And I'm like, dude, I'm fine. But then I like look back at it. I'm like, I'm really glad they rode my ass for that. It got on my ass, because you need that sometimes, and you don't realize it, but you will eventually.
Oh yeah, you learn to appreciate it. And like, just look at Michael Jordan, dude. Like, the players that play with him, they're like, dude, he was hard on us, and I didn't like when he was hard on us, but like, in the end, like, he was a great leader. Like, we won basketball games, we won championships.
Exactly. But now we're going to move into the best segment of the podcast, which is Motivation Monday. Motivation Monday is the point in the episode where I like to give the Roughneck listeners a little bump, inspirational bump, to set the tone for their week as they listen on Monday morning. So what do you have for Motivation Monday, Mr. Gabe Shroyer?
So throughout this week, what's kind of been on my mind is being a consumer and being a producer. And I'm sure you know very well, having your own podcast about producing, and it's good to look throughout the whole week or through your day and be like, how much am I consuming? How much am I taking? Whether it be social media, or TV shows or movies, and where am I producing, like where am I bearing fruit and harvesting all the work that I've done. You just have to look like in yourself and be like, how am I affecting future generations? Where am I producing, and say, how can I produce? Get rid of that social media that's hurting you, whether it be Snapchat, Instagram. Take it off your home screen or set a limit for yourself. You think it's like a good time for you to rest, but it only drains you. And that's what I've learned myself, is like, hey, just stop laying down on your bed, go out. Like, I was thinking to myself earlier in the week, I'm like, man, how do I figure out all that's on OSU campus? I just need to look at these things, these maps, and talk to people. And I'm like, no, you go out, like you produce, you actually go do what you're supposed to do, to learn about the campus. And just produce. And like, you can pray all you want, but a faith without works is dead. And that's just facts. Even if you're not religious, you're not going to do much if all you do is contemplate all the time. Your meditation is just going to look like you trying to get all the bad things that you just consumed out of your brain. So, just be a producer. Stop consuming all day.
Yeah, it's funny that you said something. I'm going to bring up something that we had in the past, like the social media. People always like knock our generation and like the generations after us because like, oh, they're always on their phones. They're always on social media. You know what? Like, we recognize that. I think me and you are at an age where like we're in that tweener stage where we still want to get out. We recognize it. And we're like, we need to go like get outside and just like get away from our phones, get away from social media, because it's one, it can hurt your mental state. And two, it's draining. Spend like, you get,
it helps you.
If you have an iPhone, you get a note, like you get a freaking thing that tells you how much screen time you had and how much time you spent on that.
Yeah.
If you ever actually look at that, it's like a wake up call where you're like, well, damn, like I need to probably lay off of being on Instagram every night, because what I've tried to start doing is, 15-20 minutes before bed, my phone goes up, because like, even if you like watch TV or something, but like get off your phone, read a book, just sit there and think, like just take time to yourself. And like, that should be like every morning. It's a big thing. Like, wake up, don't look at your phone for 15-20 minutes, because 99% of us at our age, what do we do? The first thing we do when we wake up, we look at our phone. Who texted us? How many notifications do I have? Because I mean, I'm guilty of it. Like, I'll wake up and be like, oh, damn, I don't have any notifications. This sucks. Like, I just got an email from Cole's or something. I don't know. But going off of like bringing people with you, text a friend, text somebody and be like, hey, you want to come? Let's go shoot hoops. Let's go freaking ride bikes. I don't know if you know who Alex Smith is, but he's my best friend. Me and him last summer, you know how many times we went and rode bikes from Pataskala, which if you're that person who rides bikes in Pataskala, you're kind of weird. But at the same time, we're like, you know what? Let's get outside and do something instead of just sitting inside on our phones, or even me and him sitting up in the barn drinking beer. Let's go for a ride. Let's go like just hang out and just back to the old days. That's what it brings me to. Because I remember when I was like, when we were young, you just rode around on a bike. Nobody had phones. We called our friends on the house phone and said, hey, you want to hang out? All right, I'll be over in like 20 minutes. Yeah. And you just went and rode bikes around neighborhoods.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, I want to say that, like, social media is not a bad thing, of course, but like, you just
I can tell you, social media is the greatest thing for my podcast.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I agree with that.
But yeah, social media is not terrible, but it's sometimes you need to take a step away from it, because like you see a lot of people do a social media detox, I think is what they call it, where they just drop all their social media for an extended period of time. And like, I hear people all the time too, like they make an excuse for why they can't do it. Oh, I don't want to lose my streaks. You're just making a very bad excuse to keep your Snapchat. Like, because that's showing that is more important than like honestly growing as a person.
Yeah, they do that stuff on purpose. The social media, they send you notifications. You're like, oh, I got to check this. It's like, no, you really don't. Like, yeah.
But with that, that's a wrap on the 51st episode of the Roughnecks podcast. It's crazy to think that tomorrow, September 21st, I believe. Yes, the 21st is the 1-year anniversary of this podcast. Hopefully, me and Teddy will get an episode recorded. He is a busy man. He coaches at Ohio Wesleyan now, so he has very little free time right now with the actual season being underway. But thank you, Gabe, for being a guest on the podcast, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, so glad that you invited me. Glad that I could help. Yeah.
Who knows? Maybe you'll be a reappearing guest, because that's been the common theme lately. People want to be coming back on. I actually just had, for anybody who's listened for a while, Jerry Harper asked me if he can come back on. So we might be getting him on this week, actually, possibly. But this hopefully can benefit any student athlete who's listening. I highly recommend, like, if you ever have a question, reach out to me or reach out to Gabe. I guarantee you we'll help you out any time we can, because it is a very hard decision when you're making that college decision in general. Even if you don't add athletics into it, picking the right college is hard. But until next time, you guys know the deal. Life is hard and is going to knock you down just like a bull does to a bull rider. Don't let that bull of life walk all over you. Get up, grab the bull by the horns, and take control of your life. Till next time, Roughnecks out.
Oh, thank you.